Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we're going to be sticking with one of the main themes on this channel in the sense that this company operates in the plant-based protein or vegan space. However, unlike some of the other companies we've discussed recently, the stock today is really focused on flipping the fast food industry here in North America on its head. Now the company name is Odd Burger, and I'm super excited to talk about this one for a number of reasons. So we're going to do a deep dive analysis on their business model. We're going to talk about their recent earnings and some big news in terms of West Coast expansion plans that the company just announced. Now before we get into it today, you guys, please take a second to smash the like button. It really does help get this content to other people like yourself who may find value. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, McNallie Money, feel free to do so. And let me know in the comment section below if you've heard of Odd Burger before, if you've ever visited one of their restaurants, and what you personally think about their growth prospects moving forward. Now without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today we're going to be discussing Odd Burger Corporation, ticker symbol ODD or ODD on the TSX Venture Exchange. And as mentioned, I'm super excited to talk about this one for a number of reasons. So first up, it fits very well with the channel niche. We've talked about a number of these other vegan or plant-based protein type of companies on the channel. So Very Good Food Company, Tattooed Chef, Beyond Meat, Rock Shield Capital, which is just rebranded to the Eat Well Group. But Odd Burger fits very well with this theme. However, they've got a twist in the sense that they're really focused on the fast food segment of the vegan or plant-based food space. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. They've also got what they call smart kitchen technology, and they're really looking to automate a lot of the traditional fast food processes or in-store experiences. Now, in addition to that, Odd Burger is a true penny stock in every sense of the word. So you can see as of close here on Wednesday, August 8th, they closed out the session at $1.01 Canadian. They were down 2 cents a share or just about 2% on the day. Now, given that close and the fact that they have just under 83 million shares outstanding, you get a market cap on this guy of about $84 million Canadian. So compared to some of those other companies in this space, it really is the smallest that we've talked about on the channel. And as you guys know, I love identifying these companies early. We've been really lucky with the channel recently. We've had a number of penny stocks, Peak FinTech Group, Control Technologies, Rock Shield Capital that have done extremely well for us over the last month. And I really feel like Odd Burger could be the next penny stock in that category for us. Now for full disclosure, I currently do not own any shares of Odd Burger. However, this one is definitely on my watch list. And as always, I'll keep you guys posted on if and when I do decide to initiate a position in Odd. Now, in terms of video format here, you guys, we're going to talk about what it is Odd Burger does. We're going to do a deep dive analysis on their business model and discuss a couple of pieces of recent news that have just come out in terms of earnings and their expansion plans moving forward. But before we do, I did want to take a quick look at the chart. So it is worth mentioning Odd Burger has just recently rebranded from Globally Local back in June of this year, so 2021. And they have been trading relatively flat over the last couple of months. So if you look back to the end of April here, you can see on the 23rd, they were trading at $1 even. Now they're still trading virtually unchanged 4 or 5 months later. However, in the meantime, they did have a nice little run at the start of May up to $1.62, and the share price has pulled back quite dramatically since then. So I'm looking at this as a potential buying opportunity or entrance point into Odd Burger, and I'm going to talk to you guys about why I think we saw that pullback in a couple of slides here. Now, before we get into the recent developments, I did want to give a quick high-level summary of what it is Odd Burger does for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with the company. So they're really an emerging plant-based food technology company or vegan-based company that's designed to disrupt the fast food industry. Now, Chickpea is the company's mascot. You'll see him in their investor presentation. Odd Burger creates delicious plant-based food using simple and sustainable ingredients that are better for people and the planet. And the majority of the food that they actually sell is processed and manufactured in-house in their London, Ontario production facility. And we're going to talk about that in more detail. We're going to take a look at their restaurant or retail location designs later in the presentation. But I did want to give you a taste, pun intended, of what the company is about before we get into the recent news developments. So the first piece of news that I wanted to discuss here is actually in regards to earnings, which just came out on August 30th, so very recent here. And this is for the 9-month period or first 3 quarters of 2021 ending June 30th. So you can see Odd Burger is one of the world's first vegan fast food chains and was actually the first one to go public or become publicly traded. And if you scroll down here, you can see that they reported revenue for the 3-month period, so Q3, of $260,000. And for the first 9 months or 3 quarters of 2021, revenue is sitting at about $785,000. So it is actually down year over year compared to the first 3 quarters of 2020. However, they have seen a nice pop in Q3 of this year compared to Q3 of last year, which came in at only $146,000. Now, the other number that I wanted to draw your attention to here, you guys, is actually the net loss for the quarter. So this came in at a $3.5 million loss compared to an $81,000 loss in Q3 of 2020. So you can see a big change there. We're going to talk about why in a second. And Q3 actually makes up the majority of the $4.1 million loss that they've seen year to date. So in terms of earnings per share or loss per share, they've recorded a 6-cent per share loss year to date in the first 3 quarters, or a 4-cent per share loss in the last 3 months or most recent Q3 quarter. So this is the first reason I think we've seen that share price pullback, you guys. But if you read more closely into this, $2.5 million of that $3.5 million loss was actually attributed to a one-time listing expense in relation to their TSX Venture listing. So this is something that they're not going to see in quarters moving forward and was really the lion's share of that loss in Q3 of this year. Now, the other thing to pay attention to here is there was only one franchised retail restaurant and one corporate restaurant that managed to stay open through the duration of Q3. So obviously the pandemic situation we're facing across Canada here has a huge impact on retail and restaurant type of industries. And this is really a short-term headwind that I would expect to start to improve in Q4 and moving into F22. Now, as of right now, they have 4 retail locations, all based in Ontario. So Vaughan, Toronto, Windsor, and London. In addition to that, they've got their manufacturing facility, which we just mentioned, which is also located in London, Ontario. So with a lot of the pandemic restrictions and lockdowns, many of these locations were closed for part or all of Q3, which obviously is going to impact top-line revenue. Now, a perfect segue here, you guys. Speaking of their locations and the number of restaurants, they just announced on September 7th, so very recently, last week, that they're planning to expand to the west coast of Canada here with a new Calgary franchise location. Now, this is huge news for a couple of reasons for me. Number one, I'm based in Calgary, so I'm super excited to be able to go into one of these stores and actually try out Odd Burger products. Secondly, this really helps bring brand awareness and brand presence to the west coast of Canada and start to build out their national expansion plans. And that's exactly what the CEO, James McInnes, mentions in his comments here. So our first West Coast location is a major milestone towards positioning Odd Burger as a global brand. Strategic franchises are a big part of our growth strategy of expanding throughout North America. And Odd Burger is actually planning to have over 20 restaurant locations up and running within the next 12 months, including a flagship location in Manhattan. And that's actually mentioned in the earnings release here. You can see 20 locations operational by this time next year, including that huge presence in New York, in Manhattan, which is really going to be the flagship location in the United States. So those are really a couple of reasons off the get-go here that I'm super excited about potentially investing in Odd Burger. They've had some challenges in Q3, so the big loss attributed to the listing expense. They had some restaurants that were shut down due to the pandemic, so revenue looks a little bit challenged year over year, and they've got these big growth or expansion plans, which I think are really going to drive brand awareness and top-line revenue over the coming quarters here. So keep those thoughts in mind as we now transition into the investor presentation and our deep dive analysis on Odd Burger's business model. So first up here, I wanted to spend a second on just the history of how Odd Burger came to be, because it is quite interesting. So James McInnes, who's the founder of this company and the current CEO, so it's founder led, which you guys know I love, actually started Odd Burger back in 2014, and it looked very different back then. So this was actually a vegan-based organization that really focused on bringing organic fruits and veggies from local farmers to customers' doorstep. So essentially a vegan delivery service. Now in 2015, James' wife Leah got involved. She's actually the COO of this company, and she was pivotal in a lot of this agile change that we saw at Odd Burger. So she was instrumental in actually getting them involved in the vegan-based meal kit industry. And what they learned in doing that is people, or the customers they were serving, really loved the vegan fast food recipes within these meal kits. So in 2016, Odd Burger brought what they've coined as their famous burger to the London, Ontario Rib Fest, and to their surprise, they actually sold out due to overwhelming demand. So they saw there was a need for this type of product. People loved vegan, they loved fast food, and they specifically loved the famous burger. So following that, Odd Burger actually launched a food truck, which is how a lot of these startup restaurant type of businesses really make a splash. And in 2017, Odd Burger launched Canada's first vegan fast food restaurant, and within 6 months, they had actually opened the world's first 24-hour vegan drive-thru. Now following that, in 2018, they opened up their own manufacturing center, which again is based in London, Ontario. And now fast forward to 2021, they're eyeing upwards of 20 restaurant locations within the next 12 months. So huge growth trajectory and really interesting story or history behind this company. I thought personally it was really cool that James and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. McInnes, were so willing and able to adapt and transform this business based on customer demand, and by really focusing on what resonated with the end user, they've transformed their business from a delivery company to a meal kit company to a food truck to now a brick and mortar restaurant chain within a couple of years. Now, speaking of evolution in terms of their business model, their menu has also evolved. So you can see in the top left here, their famous burger is still the bread and butter of this company, but they've evolved into so much more. So burgers, chicken wraps, wings, even some dairy substitute products. So we make iconic fast food vegan so that you can enjoy the classics without the guilt. We offer a full menu, which includes breakfast, ice cream, milkshakes, burgers, and wraps, all at prices comparable to other major fast food chains. And I think that last statement is crucially important here, you guys. We've talked about this a lot with these plant-based protein companies. Obviously, the intention is great. Consumers love to feel good about the products that they're buying, help out the planet, help out animal rights, but ultimately people vote with their wallets. And if you want customers to return time and time again, you need to make your price points competitive. And that's exactly what you see here. So the famous burger, for example, retails for $6.99, so very comparable to a Big Mac or some of the other more common burgers at fast food chains. And if you're looking to get a combo, it comes in at just under 12 bucks. So again, very in line with other retailers like McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Tim Hortons, whatever the case is. So moving along here, you guys, we've talked about the share price. We've talked about some of the recent developments, the history of how this company came to be. Now we're going to get into the investor presentation and talk about the internal operations of Odd Burger. So there's really three key pillars at this company. So number one is restaurant innovation. So these restaurants are really focused on small square footage, but extremely efficient locations. And that's exactly what you can see here. They're compact, they're cashless, they're optimized for delivery and takeout, and they really use this smart kitchen technology, which we're going to talk about in more detail here in a couple of slides, to automate a lot of the solutions and processes that you find in fast food retail locations. Their menu items, which about 2/3 of them are actually produced in-house, are designed to be cooked in minutes, which ensures freshness to the end consumer and that consistency that people crave from fast food. Now, second pillar here is really related to the manufacturing and distribution. So they've got 5 years of R&D or research and development behind their products. They've created over 30 different plant-based protein products and the corresponding or complementing sauces that are actually designed specifically for fast food consumption. They focus on natural and locally sourced ingredients, which we're going to see on the next slide, and they really strive to balance the natural health benefits found in the plants that they use, so simplicity and very limited processing, with taste and creating delicious foods that the consumers come back for time and time again. And then underpinning all of this, you guys, is their vegan ethics, which is at the core of this company, and it has been since 2014 when they founded it. So if you actually go onto their website and you look at the leadership team, it calls out how long each and every one of them has been vegan. But Oddburger really believes that animal rights, promoting human health, and creating a sustainable food system can go hand in hand, and that's really the mission or core statement behind this company. Now, one thing that I found interesting while doing my research on Oddburger, and a reason why I'm so passionate about the plant-based food space, is the amount of water consumption, you guys, that goes into traditional meat products is just mind-blowing. So in order to make one traditional beef burger patty, it requires about 4,000 water bottles, or roughly 600 gallons of water. So you got to think they need to grow the crops or feed that these animals then eat. They also need to give water to the cattle themselves. And then there's a multitude of other steps that also require fresh water. Now, in comparison, Oddburger or plant-based protein patties require less than 1% of this initial water input. And that's why I'm so bullish on this industry holistically, you guys. The global population continues to go up. However, the supply of fresh drinking water continues to go down. So at some point, there's going to need to be a change here, especially as third world countries start to adopt Western diet. We simply don't have the amount of water in the world to sustain traditional animal-based or animal protein type of consumption levels. So again, Oddburger and some of these other companies that we've talked about on the channel really see plant-based protein as a way to combat not only the water usage, but also the animal rights and some of the other challenges or concerns within the global food production sector. So next up is the actual supply chain or distribution model. So you can see here the local farmers, which we just talked about. Products are taken from these local farms. They're then transferred to the manufacturing facility in London, Ontario. They then work with their distribution network to get those products into the actual Oddburger restaurants, which you can see here, and ultimately make their way into the hands of the end consumers or customers. And this slide here really calls out some of the main competitive advantages that Oddburger feels they have over others in this space. So first and foremost, 100% vegan, that's really their claim to fame. They've got unique plant-based food products that they've developed and manufacture in-house, on-demand cooking for fresh taste, and crucially important here, you guys, is consistent food. That's really what people go to these restaurants for, is that same taste, look, and feel that they get across any of the retail locations. In many cases, they can actually prepare their food in under 60 seconds, so ensuring that fresh and hot product without the wait. And the final point here, which I thought was super impressive and really speaks to their level of automation within their restaurants, is many of these locations can operate with just a single staff member. So because they're cashless, they've got the automated ordering kiosks and the smart kitchen technology, they can really cut down on the salaries, benefits type of expense that's associated with the restaurant industry. So if you think about it here and you take a step back, this is not just a plant-based protein or vegan type of company. They've really got a couple different areas of growth or a couple different angles to their business model. So they've got the restaurants, the brick and mortar locations, they've got their underlying food, the research and development, and the different product portfolio that they're actually able to create in-house. And then they've got their technology side of things, which is really focused on the robotics and automation component within each and every one of these restaurants. So I wanted to take a second now and unpack each one of these three different components of the company. So first up is the food manufacturing. As mentioned, they've got 29 to 30 unique plant-based products specifically designed for use in their restaurants. These range from meat-based alternatives like chicken, beef, and pork, all the way to egg and dairy alternatives like cheese and creamy sauces. They're all organic, they're non-GMO ingredients for many of the key products that go into these menu items, and they've really emphasized the simplicity and natural ingredients, which include the chickpeas, their mascot, wheat, oats, and beans. So simple ingredients, you guys, that they can transform into very tasty end products for their consumers. And a couple other stats I thought were really interesting about the food manufacturing component here. They're 100% nut-free. They've also got production lines that are gluten and soy-free as well. So really appealing to a wide variety of consumers. And the stat that I thought was great here, you guys, nearly 2/3 or 65% of all the food sold at their restaurants is actually manufactured in-house by Odd Burger. So they really do control a big majority of their means of production, which allows them to control pricing and the supply. Now, they also own all of the IP or intellectual property within their food development and manufacturing facility, so they don't have to worry about any legal or licensing issues down the road. Now, jumping over to the restaurant side of things, so the smart kitchens, as mentioned, they're very small, compact store designs. So in many cases, less than 1,000 square feet. So not only are they able to cut down on the salaries expense, but also on the rent or the lease expense. That is really one of the top costs associated with the restaurant industry. Much of their equipment is actually pre-programmed, so they can actually cook food in under 30 seconds for some of their menu items. They've got the self-checkouts. All of the locations are cashless. So again, they don't have to have a cashier or a staff member actually manning a till. And they've got proprietary automation technology, which we're going to look at in a second here, which is really focused on improving efficiency within these restaurant locations. And that's exactly what this slide talks about. So it is important to call out proprietary here, you guys. Right now, Odd Burger has just completed the design phase and they're now entering the prototyping phase. But they're really looking to use robots as a solution for many of the repetitive or time-consuming tasks that you find in a restaurant. So an example of that would be dressing or garnishing the burgers or food as it's being prepared. And the objective here is to make the food preparation faster and more efficient, which ultimately provides customers with greater customization and that high level of consistency across all of their locations. Now, the other wild card I think that we'll start to see here, you guys, is people think robotics and future technology is really cool. So customers are going to want to go into these locations to see these robots in action, exactly like we saw with self-checkouts and self-ordering kiosks at some of these restaurants in the past. People want to experience the future, and I think this is a big reason that Odd Burger has such a strong and dedicated social media following, because their customers are really interested in what they're doing and they really like their refreshed or innovative look on the fast food industry. So now that we've talked about the business model, we've looked at the different components or elements that really separate Odd Burger from some of the other fast food chains and the competitors in the plant-based food space. I wanted to end things off with a look at the numbers here. So this slide really talks about the total addressable market, or TAM, of the plant-based food market holistically over the next couple of years. So very similar to some of the other investor presentations we saw, compound annual growth rate projected at just under 12%. And Odd Burger expects by 2027, the plant-based food market is going to be in excess of $74 billion. So huge growth potential here for plant-based foods as a whole, you guys. And the next slide is really interesting as well, because in addition to that growth that we're seeing in plant-based foods, we're also seeing growth in the global fast food market. So they're expecting a compound annual growth rate in fast food of 4.6% between 2018 and 2027, with a total addressable market of $932 billion by the year 2027. So Odd Burger really has the opportunity to capitalize on both growth trajectories here of plant-based food and of fast food itself. And if they're able to master their business model and their franchise expansion plans, I think they could see some huge growth within the next couple of years in terms of the number of locations and the share price of this company. And that's really one of the big reasons I'm so excited about this potential investment in Odd Burger, because they're involved in a number of fast, high growth industries that I don't see slowing down anytime soon. Now, the last piece here that I wanted to share with you guys, we mentioned in the initial slide about 83 million shares outstanding. Now, the crazy thing for me with Odd Burger is 43 million of these shares are actually founder owned. So over half, or 52% of all the available shares are actually tied up by insiders or founders, which again is a phenomenal thing as a potential investor in Odd Burger, because it means that there's only about 40 million shares that are available for the general public to buy and trade. So to summarize, you guys, I think Odd Burger is in a really unique position in the sense that it's involved in the vegan plant-based food space, which I'm super bullish on. They've got a focus on the fast food space, which we really haven't seen with any of the other companies that we've talked about on this channel. And they've got some really unique ideas related to technology, automation, and intellectual property. They also own their own means of production, and they actually process and manufacture over 2/3 of the products that they sell in their restaurants. Now, that being said, they have seen their share price pull back quite dramatically over the last couple of months. So they're down from highs of about $1.60 to about $1. So I think that's really based on some of these numbers we saw in Q3. So they had a big one-time loss attributed to listing expenses. They saw year-over-year revenue decline for the first 9 months of the year, which in my personal opinion is really attributed to the pandemic situation rather than the underlying business model. And I think it may be a great opportunity to pick some shares up at a nice little discount to what we could have got a few months ago. Now, in addition to that, they've got an aggressive plan to build out the number of retail or restaurant locations over the next 12 months. We didn't spend a lot of time on that in this video, but I do plan on talking about their expansion in detail in some future videos on Oddburger. And to cap it all off, you guys, they're founder-led, and the founders actually own over 50% of the shares outstanding. So if and when this company does start to gain that brand recognition and traction with the investment community, I could definitely see share price moving very quickly. And that being said, you guys, if you would like to look into Oddburger in more detail as a potential investment opportunity, I have a link in the bio or video description below that you can follow for additional details. Now, as mentioned, I currently do not hold any shares in Oddburger, but this one is definitely on my watch list. I'll keep you guys posted on if and when I do decide to pull the trigger. As always, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Specifically interested if you've been to an Oddburger restaurant, what you thought of their products, and if you're currently holding any shares. Now, if you're still watching at this point in the video, make sure you smash that like button. It really does help get this content to other people like yourself who may find value. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, McNallie Money, feel free to do so. And on a final note, you guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.